What's good, y'all? You dub back again. This time, pure straightforward video. This video is dealing with a discussion that's existed in the One Piece fandom for several years, if not well over a decade now. Considering if you go back to an interview that'll be referencing that Oda did, and it came up again in the Throne Wars community. Shout out to Throne Wars. That was good, y'all. There's a phenomenal post, one of the best I've seen in a long time, and it deals with what if an animal had the same devil fruit as obviously the species? Now, we can go back to Otis when Oda was asked in this interview. And more or less he said that the species would be enlightened. Okay. The user would be enlightened. Now, you take that and interpret it a number of ways, but the main thing I got out of what Oda's saying is one of two things. Number one, he had not yet conceived of the concept. Number two, he didn't want to reveal too much. Because let's be honest, we are 920 some chapters in, right? We have barely gotten jack about devil fruits. We've barely gotten jack about hockey. There's a lot we don't know. So it would not be a surprise either way, but especially if Oda didn't want to reveal his cards too early. But what does he mean by enlightened? I mean, that can take from just basic next level stuff on some sci-fi to some spiritual stuff. I got 5 different breakdowns as to what logically could potentially happen if the user had the same thing. Now, here's the thing. There are different models of zones, as we know. If it was a dog, we know there's a canine. We know dogs, wolves, etc. Right? Could be a hyena. When it comes to, let's say, a cat, you got cats, leopards, cheetahs, lions, all that good stuff. With humans, we even see, you know, both the regular model as well as the Buddha. So it is what it is. The first one that many, and including myself, rock with heavily is the idea of evolution. Now, you can go back to Pokemon if you want to. You can go back to Digimon if you want to. Hell, you can think of a number of things throughout fiction, right? You can even think of Bakugan, for example, and the evolutionary states there. And, or even for you Ben 10 fans, think of Ben 10. Think somewhere around Ultimate Alien is where he really started getting the better forms of the potential species. Anyways, evolution. You can think of it in a few different ways. You can think of it that, you know, you just have a progressively evolved state. You could have that over time. You could have, you know, progressive, like you kind of speed up the rapid progression of a species. Or you can think of that you can end up in really where the farthest end of the evolutionary cycle of a species may end up. So you can think of it a few different ways. All of them are valid models. The second example I thought of was the Apex. Now, if you know WWE, if you're a pro wrestling fan and you know the Viper himself, Randy Orton, one of the nicknames he has besides Legend Slayer and Viper is Apex Predator. Okay. And for those who don't know what Apex is, it is, think of the top of the food chain. An Apex Predator is the top of the food chain, all right, or the food web, depending on the situation. And Apex is the zenith, the precipice, the peak at which you can achieve. So you know Marvel Comics, you know Captain America Steve Rogers is quote unquote peak human, even though I disagree and say he's low superhuman. But regardless of that, the same thing applies to Batman and Bruce Wayne when it comes to their physical abilities. They always say peak human, whatever that's supposed to mean. The apex of the top, the absolute ceiling at which a species can go to. Okay. So if you think of it like this, you think of, you know, like you had an ultimate form, Cars and JoJo's, the ultimate form of whatever the thing is. Now you can say, well, how is that different from evolution? The evolutionary cycle could take really trillions of, if not quintillions or septillions of different, you know, processes to where it may expand to. But the apex is the absolute peak at which this species could see its potential. It's the absolute potential of that. So take that for what it's worth. Now, mutation. All right, that's the third thing I thought of. And most mutations, if anybody knows about mutations, biologically, I believe it's 98% of mutations are malign, which means they're bad. They're not benign. They're not good. But if mutation causes you to think of the X-Men in Marvel Comics, that makes perfect sense. If mutation also makes you think of characters such as the Incredible Hulk, Dr. Bruce Banner, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, and such, it also makes sense. Mutations are simply alterations of cells or pieces of DNA. For example, cancer is simply a mutation of the cells, generally in a very malign manner. So a mutation. So pretty much instead of evolving or going into the ultimate form of a species, you get something else entirely different. You could have a potential chimera type situation. You could have to where the creature becomes something else inherently. You could have to where, I don't know, you have, for example, the Hito Hito Nomi, which Chopper has. Let's say a human had that. Instead of Tony Chopper getting, let's say, Frankie got the Hito Hito Nomi. And Frankie, you get a speeded up process that I'll get to in a second on another example of a potential that had. But let's say a speeded up process, and you see Monster Point, which you could say about Awakening. Let's say instead of that, you got with Frankie, you got like this King Kong or massive ape type creature, or you get a potential of a giant human. Maybe not quite a giant, somewhere maybe between Big Ma'am and the giants or Kaido, Oars and all of them. So you just get these massive. Do you understand the potential of the speed, durability, physical strength, and such that creature may have, and even agility, just amped physical abilities? It would be nasty. And who knows what that creature may develop. Maybe that creature develops, if Frankie has it, maybe instead of 4 limbs, he got 6, maybe 8. Who knows? Maybe that creature develops scales or fur or wings, whatever the case may be. Highly adaptable in any type of ways. May become a freak. Right? Number 4, possession. Now, when I think of possession, a lot of people can reasonably think of demonic possession. And we've seen some things with potentially Haki with Ashura and such. All right. But we know that devil fruits are spirits. And we know about the process of awakening. At least we are introduced to the process. We don't know exactly how one awakens. But let's say that the devil fruit spirit, which bestows powers and abilities onto the user, becomes the predominant spirit. So you see, I can make an argument that, Luffy has a Goma Goma no Mi spirit, right? And Luffy has a strong will inherently anyways. But let's just say because it's not the same type of spirit, let's say that spirit is latent and dormant, that it bestows the power, but the spirit doesn't really act up. Maybe that's what happens when awakening, the spirit comes and there's a battle of wills or such, and you have to learn how to do well alongside the spirit or overcome it. I think Pharaoh Space has done a few videos on that. Anyways, let's say in this case that the same species spirit overwhelms. We already see the awakenings of Zoans with the mindless ones and Impel Down. Now, I'll argue that Chopper's Monster Point is a key to his awakening, if not his awakened state. He just was able to unlock that and bypass because of the Rumble Ball. Now, you saw that he had to do mental control training over the time skip. And there be some truth to that. So, a possessed state, a possessed human, pretty much you have a superhuman. That's what you have, and that's potentially devastating. Who knows what comes out of that? And the last, but definitely not least, thought I had toward this concept, towards this potential, is super enhanced attributes. And what do I mean by that? instead of an evolved state, instead of the apex chain state, really instead of any alteration or any possession of it on some spiritual level, we simply have whatever the attributes of that species are amped 100-fold. For example, you have primates, their agility. That shit's ridiculous. Like you pretty much not touching it. Better than Luffy's agility, better than you know about Daredevil, Matt Murdock in Marvel, Nightcrawler in Marvel, Kurt Wagner, Spider-Man, Peter Parker, better than any of that. Crazy agility. When it comes to, snakes, the crazy speed with striking, potential venom, all of these attributes are enhanced to their utmost degree. So instead of becoming another species or anything else like that, anything weird, you just have ridiculous abilities. You know how devastating and dangerous that would be. Think about that. You have the natural ability, but now you're just physically a monstrous threat. And you can take that for whatever worth. Depending on what animal that creature might be, it would be disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. Unexpected one to like, comment, subscribe, give me your thoughts on the subject, and talk with y'all later. All right, y'all. Have a beautiful day, beautiful night. Peace.